As my brother smirked across the mahogany table, clutching the title deed like a winning lottery ticket, I made a promise to myself. One day, I'd make that house mine again. But not for them. My name is Juliet, and I'm about to tell you how I destroyed my family's legacy to save my own soul. The estate lawyer's voice droned on about final distributions and asset allocations, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. The family home, the Victorian masterpiece my mother and I had spent 3 summers renovating together, was going to Kent, my younger brother, the golden boy who'd never lifted a paintbrush or spent a weekend stripping wallpaper until his fingers bled. The primary residence at 847 Maple Street will transfer to Kent Blake, the lawyer announced, sliding papers across the polished table, to carry on the family legacy. Dad nodded approvingly from his leather chair. It's what makes sense. Kent needs the stability. And Juliet? He gestured vaguely in my direction. Well, you married well. You don't need the responsibility. I kept my face perfectly composed, the way I'd learned during 12 years of charity galas and corporate dinners. But inside? Inside, I was screaming. That's very generous, I said quietly, my voice steady as glass. I'm sure Kent will take excellent care of it. Kent leaned back in his chair, already looking bored. At 34, he still carried himself like the high school quarterback he'd once been, all swagger and entitlement. Don't worry, Jules. I'll keep your old room exactly the same. You know, for visits. The condescension in his voice made my teeth ache. Visits. To the house where I'd held Mom's hand during her final weeks, where I'd painted every wall, refinished every floor, planted every rose in the garden. How thoughtful, I replied. Mom would have hated this. She'd always said the house should go to whoever loved it most, whoever understood its soul. But Mom had been dead for 2 years, and apparently her wishes died with her. Now, regarding the other assets, the lawyer continued, but I barely heard him. The rest was just money, stocks, bonds, a small trust fund, nothing that mattered, nothing that held memories. Any questions about the distribution? Dad asked, looking directly at me. I met his gaze without flinching. None at all. The meeting wrapped up with handshakes and hollow pleasantries. Kent pocketed the deed like it was spare change, already talking about updating the place and bringing it into the 21st century. Each word felt like a knife between my ribs. As we filed out of the lawyer's office, Kent caught my arm. Hey, you're not upset about this, are you? I mean, you've got that massive house in Westfield. What would you need with the old place? I looked down at his hand on my sleeve, then back at his face. He genuinely believed what he was saying. In his mind, I was still the trophy wife with the perfect life, the sister who'd married up and left the family struggles behind. If only he knew. Of course not, I said, gently pulling away. You're right. I have everything I need. But that was the biggest lie I'd told all day. 6 months ago, my husband Beckett had walked out, taking not just his love but nearly everything else with him. The prenup I'd signed at 25, young and stupid and so in love, had protected his assets, not mine. The Westfield house? Gone. The cars, the jewelry, the comfortable life I'd built? All of it. Gone. I was living in a studio apartment above a coffee shop, surviving on what I'd managed to hide in a separate account and the proceeds from selling my designer handbags. My family didn't know because I hadn't told them. Pride, maybe. Or the sick certainty that they'd somehow make it my fault. Standing in that parking lot, watching Kent climb into his BMW, a car I'd helped him buy 2 Christmases ago, I felt something shift inside me. The careful composure I'd maintained for years began to crack. "Juliet?" Dad's voice cut through my thoughts. "You sure you're all right? You look pale." I forced a smile. "Just tired. It's been a long day." "Well, get some rest. And don't be a stranger, okay? The house will always be your home, too." The house that was no longer mine. The home I'd never be welcome in again. Not really. Not as an equal. I nodded and walked to my car, the one asset Beckett had let me keep, probably out of guilt. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Kent in my rearview mirror, already on his phone, probably telling his friends about his inheritance. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at a photo of Mom and me painting the kitchen cabinets sunshine yellow. She'd chosen that color because it made her happy, she said, because even on the darkest days, walking into that kitchen felt like stepping into light. I traced her face with my finger and made that promise again, this time out loud. "I'm going to get it back, Mom. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to make this right." The photo smiled back at me, frozen in a moment when the world still made sense, when love mattered more than money, and family meant something more than bloodlines and legal documents. I had no idea then how perfectly the universe was about to align in my favor. 3 months after losing the house, I was selling my wedding ring at a pawn shop downtown. "Best I can do is $800, the clerk said, barely glancing at the 2-carat diamond that had once symbolized forever. "It's worth at least $3,000, I protested. He shrugged. "Not to me, it isn't. Take it or leave it." I took it. I needed groceries more than I needed memories. That's how far I'd fallen. From charity board member to haggling over jewelry with a guy who smelled like cigarettes, and regret. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier, and Beckett's lawyers had been thorough. Ruthless, even. My phone buzzed as I walked out of the pawn shop. Julia, my friend from law school, who'd somehow remained loyal through everything. "Coffee?" Her text read. "I have news." We met at our usual spot, a little cafe near her office. Julia looked polished as always in her navy suit, while I wore jeans and a sweater I'd bought at Target. The contrast wasn't lost on either of us. "You look tired," she said, sliding a latte across the table. "I am tired. I'm working double shifts at the real estate office just to make rent." "How's that going?" I stirred my coffee, watching the foam swirl. "Better than expected, actually. Turns out I'm good at this. Really good." It was true. After Beckett left, I'd needed work, fast. Real estate seemed logical. I'd always had an eye for properties, and I understood what wealthy buyers wanted. What I hadn't expected was how much I'd love the hunt. Finding undervalued properties, seeing their potential, negotiating deals. It felt like solving puzzles. "I've been studying investment strategies," I continued, "watching YouTube videos, reading books. Did you know you can buy foreclosed properties for pennies on the dollar?" Julia raised an eyebrow. "Planning to become a real estate mogul?" "Maybe. I flipped a small condo last month. Made $15,000 profit." "Juliet, that's amazing!" "It's survival." I took a sip of coffee. "But you said you had news." Julia's expression shifted. She pulled out her phone and showed me a news article. "Your brother's been busy." The headline read, "Local man loses $200K in cryptocurrency scam." There was Kent's photo, looking sheepish outside a courthouse. "Jesus," I whispered, reading the details. "He borrowed against the house?" Gets worse. My sources say he's been gambling too. High-stakes poker games. The kind where people break legs when you don't pay up. I stared at the article, my mind racing. How much does he owe? More than the house is worth, from what I hear. The bank's already started foreclosure proceedings. The irony was suffocating. Kent, the responsible one, the heir to the family legacy, the golden boy who was supposed to carry on the Blake name. Do Mom and Dad know? I asked. Not yet. But they will soon. The foreclosure notice gets published in the paper next week. I set down my coffee cup, my hands surprisingly steady. What happens to the house? Public auction, probably in 6 to 8 weeks. Julia leaned forward. Juliet, I know that look. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about justice. That's not justice. That's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. Julia was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. If you're serious about this, you'll need to move fast, and you'll need to be smart about it. I opened the folder. Inside were documents about setting up investment trusts, anonymous bidding procedures, property acquisition strategies. You researched all this? I asked. I've been watching your family dynamics for years. I figured this day might come eventually. She paused. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I thought about Kent's smirk when he'd gotten the deed, about Dad's dismissive wave, about Mom's memory being trampled by their greed and stupidity. I want to buy it back. And then? I don't know yet, but I know I can't let strangers have it. Julia nodded slowly. We'd need to set up a trust. Keep your name off everything until after the sale. Can you get the money together? I've got about 50,000 saved from the flipping. I could get a loan for the rest. It's risky if the bidding goes too high. It won't. Who else wants a house in that neighborhood with that much baggage? Julia smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. You've really thought about this? I've thought about nothing else. She gathered the papers. All right, let me make some calls. We'll need to move quickly and quietly. As we left the cafe, Julia caught my arm. Juliet, are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. I looked at her, this woman who'd stuck by me when everyone else had written me off, who'd helped me pick up the pieces when my perfect life shattered. They gave away something that was never theirs to give, I said. Now they get to live with the consequences. That night, I sat in my studio apartment with the foreclosure documents spread across my tiny kitchen table. The house would go up for auction in exactly 43 days. I opened my laptop and started researching auction procedures, bidding strategies, property values in the neighborhood. By morning, I had a plan. Kent had no idea what was coming. None of them did. But they were about to learn that underestimating Juliet Blake was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. The trust paperwork was finalized on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I was parked across the street from my childhood home, watching Kent pace the front porch while screaming into his phone. No, you don't understand. His voice carried across the quiet neighborhood. I just need 2 more weeks. The crypto market's about to turn around. I rolled down my window slightly, straining to hear. What do you mean the house is already scheduled for auction? That's impossible. Julia had done her homework. The Maple Street Investment Trust was registered in Delaware, completely anonymous. Even if Kent hired a private investigator, they'd hit a wall of legal paperwork that would take months to untangle. My phone buzzed. Text from Julia. Auction confirmed for next Friday, 10 a.m. You ready for this? I typed back, more than ready. That weekend, I drove past the house again. This time both my parents' cars were in the driveway. Through the living room window, I could see them gesturing wildly. Kent sat slumped in Dad's old recliner, head in his hands. The foreclosure notice had been published in the paper that morning. By now, the whole neighborhood knew. Monday morning, I was showing a client a downtown condo when my phone rang. Mom. I'm sorry, I need to take this, I told my client, stepping into the hallway. Juliet, honey, we need to talk. Mom's voice was strained, barely controlled. What's wrong? It's Kent. There's been a situation with the house. I let the silence stretch, waiting. The bank is foreclosing. Some kind of gambling debts. We had no idea he'd been borrowing against the property. Oh my God, Mom. I'm so sorry. We're meeting with lawyers, trying to figure out options. But the auction is this Friday, and we just don't have the money to stop it. How much would you need? Nearly $400,000. We've already mortgaged everything else trying to help him. I closed my eyes, picturing Mom's face. The desperation in her voice was real, and for a moment, I almost wavered. I wish I could help, I said, but after the divorce, I'm barely keeping my head above water. Of course, sweetheart. I wouldn't ask. I needed to tell someone who'd understand what this house means. After she hung up, I stood in that hallway for 5 minutes, staring at my phone. My client eventually came looking for me. Everything okay? She asked. Family drama, I said, forcing a smile. Shall we continue the tour? The auction was held on the courthouse steps. I arrived early, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, parking 3 blocks away. About 20 people had gathered, mostly investors and curiosity seekers. Lawrence, the auctioneer, was a thin man with a clipboard and a microphone that squealed feedback every few minutes. Next property, 847 Maple Street, he announced. Victorian home, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Starting bid is $200,000. I spotted Kent near the back of the crowd, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dad stood beside him, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Mom was nowhere to be seen. 200,000. Do I hear 210? A man in a suit raised his hand. 210. 220. Lawrence scanned the crowd. I waited, let them bid it up a little. 230. 240. At 260, only 3 bidders remained. The man in the suit, an older woman with a contractor's clipboard, and me. 270, I called out, my voice steady. Kent's head snapped around, searching the crowd, but with my hat and sunglasses, I was just another face. 280, the woman counted. The man in the suit shook his head and stepped back. 290, I said. The woman hesitated, then raised her hand. 300. I could see Kent whispering frantically to Dad, pointing at the bidders. Dad was shaking his head, his face red with frustration. 320, I called out. The woman looked at her clipboard, calculating. After a long moment, she stepped back too. 320 going once, Lawrence announced. Going twice. Kent broke from the crowd, pushing forward. Wait, this is my house. You can't just... Sir, please step back, Lawrence said firmly. This is a legal proceeding. 320 going 3 times. Sold to bidder number 7. I walked forward, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Lawrence handed me the paperwork. Congratulations, he said. The property transfers to the Maple Street Investment Trust. I signed the documents with a steady hand, then turned to walk away. As I passed Kent, our eyes met for just a moment. He looked confused, desperate, broken. "Excuse me?" he called after me. "Are you planning to flip this property?" I stopped, turned back. "I haven't decided yet. It's just, this was my family's home. If you're looking to sell, maybe we could work something out." I studied his face, the same face that had smirked at me across the lawyer's table 6 months ago. "I'll be in touch," I said. As I walked back to my car, I heard Dad's voice behind me. "Who the hell was that?" I drove home in silence, the deed sitting on my passenger seat. That night, I called Julia. "It's done," I said. "How do you feel?" I looked around my tiny studio apartment, then at the deed to my childhood home. Like I'm finally ready to go home. The key turned in the lock, like it had been waiting for me. I stood in the doorway of 847 Maple Street for the first time in 2 years, breathing in the familiar scent of old wood and Mom's lavender sachets. The house felt different, emptier somehow, like it had been holding its breath. "Hello, old friend," I whispered, stepping inside. The hardwood floors Mom and I had refinished still gleamed, despite Kent's neglect. But the walls told a different story. He'd painted over my careful color choices with generic beige. The kitchen where Mom had taught me to make her famous apple pie was now stark white, sterile, and cold. I walked through each room, cataloging the damage. Kent had removed most of Mom's furniture, probably sold it to pay his debts. The built-in bookshelves I'd spent a summer installing were empty. Even the curtains were gone. In Mom's old bedroom, I found the only thing Kent had left behind, a framed photo of our family from Christmas 5 years ago. We all looked so happy, so normal. I picked it up, studying our faces. "What would you think of all this, Mom?" I asked the empty room. My phone rang. Julia. "How's the house?" she asked. "Sad, but salvageable." I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Mom had loved. The roses were overgrown, the vegetable patch choked with weeds. "It needs work, but the bones are good." "What's the plan?" "I'm not sure yet. I just needed to be here first, you know?" "Take your time. You've got all the time in the world now." After Julia hung up, I continued my tour. The basement still held Mom's old paint cans and gardening tools. The attic was full of boxes Kent hadn't bothered to go through. Probably didn't even know were there. I was coming back downstairs when I heard voices outside. Through the front window, I saw a woman sitting on my porch steps. She looked young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes were worn, but clean. I opened the front door. "Can I help you?" She jumped up, startled. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone was here. The house has been empty for weeks." "It's okay. I'm the new owner. What's your name?" "Esme." She shifted nervously. "I've been staying in the park down the street, and sometimes I come here to sit. The porch gets good morning sun, and it feels safe." I looked at her more closely. Her backpack was stuffed full, and she had that careful alertness of someone who'd learned to sleep with one eye open. "Are you homeless?" I asked gently. Her cheeks flushed. "Temporarily displaced. I'm working on getting back on my feet." "What happened?" Esme hesitated, then sat back down on the steps. "My ex-husband. He got violent, so I left. But he had all the money, all the credit cards in his name. I've been trying to save up for a deposit on an apartment, but it's hard when you're spending everything on food and laundry." I sat down beside her. "How long have you been on the street?" 3 months. There's a waiting list for the women's shelter across town, but it's 6 months long. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Patterson from next door was walking her ancient beagle. The mailman waved as he passed. "This used to be my family's house," I said finally. "Really? It's beautiful. Even empty, you can tell it was loved." "My mother and I renovated it together. Every room has a story." Esme smiled. "That's nice. Having a place that's really yours, I mean. I've never had that." Something clicked in my mind, an idea so perfect, so right, that it took my breath away. "Esme, what if I told you I was thinking about turning this house into a place where women like you could stay, not just temporarily, but long enough to really get back on their feet?" Her eyes widened. "Like a shelter?" "More than that. A place where you could have your own room, learn job skills, save money. A place that treats you like a person, not a problem to be managed." "That would be incredible." "But why would you do that?" I looked at the house, seeing it with new eyes, not as the family legacy that had been stolen from me, but as something bigger, something Mom would have loved. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," I said, "and because this house was meant to help people." Esme was quiet for a long moment. "Would you really do that?" "I think I would, but I'd need help, someone who understands what women in your situation actually need." "I could help," she said quickly. "I mean, if you're serious. I know a lot of women who are struggling, and I'm good at organizing things, managing schedules." I stood up, brushing off my jeans. "Want to see the inside? Help me figure out how to make this work?" Esme's face lit up. "Really? Really? But first, are you hungry? There's a diner down the street that makes amazing pancakes." As we walked toward town, Esme chattering excitedly about room layouts and safety protocols, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. Kent had wanted to carry on the family legacy. Well, now he'd get his wish, just not the way he'd imagined. That evening, I called Julia again. "I know what I'm doing with the house," I said. "Oh. I'm turning it into a women's shelter, a place where they can rebuild their lives." Julia was quiet for a moment. "That's actually brilliant, and it'll drive your family absolutely insane." "That's just a bonus," I said, smiling. "The real reason is it's what Mom would have wanted." "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. I've got a lot of work to do." The call came at 7 in the morning, 3 weeks into renovations. "Juliet, we need to talk." Mom's voice was tight, controlled. "Can you meet us for coffee this morning?" I was standing in what used to be the formal dining room, watching contractors install safety locks on the windows. Esme was in the kitchen, sketching out meal plans for future residents. "I'm pretty busy today, Mom. Can we do this over the phone?" "No. This is important. The Sunrise Cafe on Main Street. 1 hour." She hung up before I could respond. I found them at a corner table, both looking like they'd aged 5 years in the past month. Dad's hair was grayer. Mom's hands shook slightly as she stirred her coffee. "You look tired," I said, sliding into the booth across from them. "We are tired," Dad replied. "We've been dealing with Kent's mess for weeks. The lawyers, the creditors, the shame of it all." Mom leaned forward. "But that's not why we asked you here. We heard something interesting yesterday." "Oh." "Margaret Patterson called. She said there's been construction activity at the house. Trucks, workers, people coming and going." I sipped my coffee, saying nothing. "She also said she saw you there." Dad continued, multiple times, with keys. The moment had arrived. I'd been preparing for this conversation for weeks, but my heart still hammered against my ribs. That's right, I said simply. Mom's face went white. Juliet, please tell me you didn't... I bought it back, at the auction. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Dad's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down. You bought our family home? His voice was barely controlled. I bought the house that was being foreclosed on, yes. But why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice cracked. We could have worked something out. Kept it in the family properly. Like you kept it in the family when you gave it to Kent? When you decided I didn't need it because I'd married well? Dad's face flushed red. That's different. Kent was supposed to what? Gamble it away, because that's exactly what he did. We didn't know about his problems, Mom said desperately. If we had known. You would have what? Given it to me instead. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. We both know that's not true. Mom reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back. Sweetheart, I know you're hurt, but this is still our family home. Surely you can understand why we're upset. I understand perfectly. You're upset because you lost control. Dad slammed his palm on the table, making the silverware jump. Don't you dare speak to your mother that way. We raised you better than this. You raised me to be grateful for scraps, to smile and nod while you gave away everything I'd worked for. The house belongs with family, Mom said, tears starting to fall. Not with strangers. You're right. It does belong with family, but not this family. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken that morning. The freshly painted bedrooms, the new furniture being delivered, the sign being installed by the front door. Haven't house? Dad read aloud. A Blake legacy reimagined. His voice was hollow. What is this? It's a women's shelter, a place where women who've been abandoned, abused, or forgotten can rebuild their lives. Mom stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. You turned our family home into a homeless shelter? Dad's voice rose, drawing stares from other customers. I turned an empty house into something useful, something that helps people. This is insane, Mom whispered. This is cruel. What's cruel is giving someone's inheritance to their brother because you think he deserves it more. What's cruel is never once calling to check how I was doing after my divorce. We thought you were fine, Mom protested. You never said. I never said because you never asked. You assumed I was fine because it was convenient to assume that. Dad leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a stranger. So, this is revenge. You're destroying our family legacy out of spite? I'm not destroying anything. I'm transforming it. Mom always said this house should help people. Now it will. Your mother meant help family. Dad snapped. Maybe family should have helped me when I needed it. Mom was crying openly now. Please, Juliet, we can fix this. We can work together. You could move back in, manage the property. We could make this right. It's too late for that. It's never too late, she pleaded. We're your parents. We love you. I stood up, leaving money on the table for my untouched coffee. If you loved me, you would have given me the house in the first place. If you loved me, you would have called when my marriage fell apart. If you loved me, you wouldn't be sitting here trying to guilt me into giving up the one thing I've managed to rebuild. Where are you going? Mom called after me. Home, to my house, to finish what I started. I was almost to the door when Dad's voice stopped me. "We're ashamed of you." I turned back, looking at these two people who'd raised me, who'd shaped me, who'd ultimately failed me when it mattered most. "No," I said quietly. "You're ashamed you lost your power over me. There's a difference." Outside, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands shaking. My phone buzzed with a text from Esme. "The new bed's arrived. This place is really starting to feel like home." I smiled through my tears and drove back to Maple Street, back to the house that was finally, truly mine. The phone call started that afternoon. "Juliet, this is your Aunt Carol. I just heard what you've done with the family house and I am appalled." I was in the kitchen, helping Esme organize donated supplies, when my phone rang for the 5th time in 2 hours. "Hi, Aunt Carol. How could you do this to your parents? To Kent? That boy is devastated." Kent is 34 years old. He's not a boy. "Don't get smart with me, young lady. Your uncle and I are disgusted by this vindictive behavior." I put the phone on speaker so Esme could hear. She raised her eyebrows and continued sorting canned goods. "I'm helping women get back on their feet. How is that vindictive?" "You know exactly what you're doing. You're punishing your family because you didn't get your way." "I'm using my property to help people who need it." "Your property? That house has been in our family for 3 generations. And now it's helping people who actually need help, instead of sitting empty while someone gambles away their inheritance." Aunt Carol hung up on me. "Wow," Esme said. "Your family's really upset about this." "They'll get over it." But they didn't get over it. The calls kept coming. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, family friends, even my high school guidance counselor somehow got my number. By evening, I'd turned off my phone. The next morning, I posted the first photo on social media. Just a simple shot of the front porch with the new sign, "Haven House, opening soon." The caption read, "Sometimes the best way to honor a family legacy is to transform it into something that actually helps people. Coming soon, a safe space for women rebuilding their lives. Second chances, community, hope." Within hours, the post had dozens of likes and supportive comments, but it also drew attention I wasn't expecting. I was painting the last bedroom when Esme called up the stairs. "Juliet, there's a reporter here." I found a young woman with a notebook standing on my front porch, next to a photographer. "Ms. Blake, I'm Sarah from the County Herald. We'd love to do a story about your shelter project." "I'm not really ready for press yet." "We heard this used to be your family home. That's such an interesting angle, turning a personal space into a community resource." Before I could respond, a car pulled up to the curb. Kent got out, looking haggard and desperate. "Perfect timing," Sarah murmured, signaling her photographer. "Juliet," Kent called out, jogging toward the porch. "We need to talk." "I'm sorry, but this isn't a good time," I told the reporter. "Is that your brother?" Sarah asked. "The one who lost the house?" Kent reached the porch, breathing hard. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. "Jules, please, just 5 minutes." "Kent, there are reporters here?" He glanced at Sarah and her photographer, then back at me. "I don't care. I need to talk to you." "Maybe we should do this privately," I said, but Sarah was already taking notes. "This is my family's house," Kent said, his voice rising. "You can't just steal it and turn it into some charity project." "I didn't steal anything. I bought it at a legal auction." "You knew I was in trouble. You could have helped me save it." The photographer's camera clicked rapidly. "Like you helped me when Beckett left?" I asked. "Oh, wait, you didn't even know because none of you bothered to check on me." "That's different." "How is it different?" Kent ran his hands through his hair, looking around wildly. "Because I'm family, because this house means something." "It means something to me, too. That's why I'm making sure it actually helps people instead of being gambled away." "You're destroying everything Mom built." "Mom built a home full of love and acceptance. I'm continuing that legacy." "By turning it into a homeless shelter." "By turning it into a place where women can rebuild their lives. Women like Esme here, who escaped an abusive marriage and just needed someone to believe in her." Esme stepped forward. "I was living in the park before Juliet helped me. Now I have a safe place to sleep and a chance to start over." Kent looked at Esme like he was seeing her for the first time. This is insane." "What's insane is thinking you deserve this house more than I did just because you're a man." "That's not why." "Isn't it? Dad said I didn't need the responsibility because I'd married well. You got it because you were supposed to carry on the family name." "Well, congratulations, Kent. You carried it right into bankruptcy court." Kent's face crumpled. "I lost everything, Jules. Everything. I don't have anywhere to go." For a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You had everything handed to you your entire life. The house, the family business connections, Mom and Dad's unconditional support. And you threw it all away." "I made mistakes." "You made choices, and now you get to live with them." Kent looked around desperately, at the reporters, at Esme, at the house he'd lost. "I gave you everything," he said, his voice breaking. I met his eyes, remembering every slight, every dismissal, every time I'd been overlooked in favor of the golden boy. "Now, you know how it feels?" Kent stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back to his car without another word. Sarah scribbled furiously in her notebook. "This is quite a story. When can we schedule a proper interview?" "Next week," I said, "after we're officially open." As the reporters left, Esme touched my arm. "Are you okay?" That looked hard. "It was necessary," I said, watching Kent's car disappear around the corner. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." I deleted it and went back to painting. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was scheduled for 10 in the morning. By 9:30, nearly 50 people had gathered on the front lawn. "I can't believe this many people came," Esme whispered, adjusting the microphone we'd borrowed from the community center. "Small towns love a good story," I replied, smoothing my navy dress, especially one about second chances. The mayor was there, along with several city council members, local business owners who'd donated supplies, volunteers who'd helped with renovations. Even some of my old real estate clients had shown up. Sarah from the Herald was back, this time with a bigger camera crew. The story had been picked up by regional news outlets after her article ran. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor began, "we're here today to celebrate the opening of Haven House, a remarkable example of turning personal tragedy into community triumph." I stepped up to the microphone, my hands surprisingly steady. 3 months ago, this house was empty and forgotten. Today, it's a home again, not just for the women who'll live here, but for all of us who believe everyone deserves a second chance. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "I want to introduce you to Esme, who'll be our resident coordinator. She's going to tell you what Haven House really means. Esme approached the microphone nervously, then seemed to find her strength. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car, she began. My husband had convinced me I was worthless, that no one would ever help me. I believed him. The crowd grew quiet. But Juliet saw something different. She saw potential where everyone else saw a problem. She gave me not just a room, but a purpose. Esme's voice grew stronger. Haven House isn't just about shelter. It's about believing in yourself again. Tears pricked my eyes as the crowd erupted in genuine applause. Now, I said, returning to the microphone, let's officially open Haven House. I lifted the scissors to cut the blue ribbon stretched across the front door. The cameras clicked, people cheered, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then I saw the car. Dad's silver sedan pulled up to the curb, and both my parents got out. They looked older, more fragile than they had at the coffee shop. Mom clutched Dad's arm as they approached the crowd. The celebration continued around us, but I felt frozen. Several people noticed my parents and began whispering. Juliet, Mom called out, pushing through the crowd. We need to see this. The mayor paused mid-sentence. Sarah's photographer swiveled toward the commotion. Mom, Dad, this isn't the time. No, it's exactly the time, Dad said, his voice carrying across the lawn. We need to see what you've done to our family home. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Esme moved closer to me, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Would you like a tour? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Yes, Mom said. We would. I led them through the front door, the crowd following at a respectful distance. The foyer gleamed with fresh paint and new furniture. Family photos had been replaced with inspirational quotes and community resources. This was your grandmother's sitting room, Mom whispered, staring at what was now a counseling office. Now it's where women can get help finding jobs and housing, I replied. We moved through the house. The formal dining room had become a computer lab. The library was now a children's playroom for residents' kids. Mom's old bedroom was divided into 2 smaller rooms, each with a single bed and dresser. You've destroyed it, Dad said finally, standing in what used to be his den. You've erased our entire history. I've repurposed it, given it new life. This isn't what your mother would have wanted, he continued, his voice rising. The crowd in the hallway grew quiet, straining to hear. A place that helps women start over. Sounds exactly like her, I said. She meant family, Mom burst out. She wanted this house to stay in the family. Then maybe the family should have acted like family. We made one mistake. You made a choice. You chose Kent over me. You chose tradition over fairness. You chose your comfort over my feelings. Dad stepped closer, his face red with anger. We gave you everything growing up. We supported your marriage, your choices. You supported the version of me that made you comfortable, the trophy wife who smiled and stayed quiet. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my dreams, my goals? When did you ever see me as more than Kent's sister or Beckett's wife? Mom was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. We're your parents. We love you. You love the idea of me, the version that doesn't challenge you or make you uncomfortable. The crowd had grown completely silent. Even the reporters had stopped taking notes. We were wrong, Mom said suddenly, her voice breaking. We should have given you the house. We should have seen how much it meant to you. The admission hung in the air like smoke. That's why I had to take it, I said quietly. Dad looked around the transformed house, at the women's faces watching from doorways, at the signs of new life everywhere. You've made something beautiful from the ashes, he said finally. I hope someday you can forgive us. He turned and walked toward the front door. Mom hesitated, looking back at me one more time. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Your mother would be proud too. Then they were gone, leaving me standing in the hallway surrounded by strangers who'd witnessed the most painful conversation of my life. Esme squeezed my hand. Are you okay? I looked around at the house that was finally, truly mine, at the women who would call it home, at the future we were building from the ruins of the past. I'm perfect, I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between utility bills and donation acknowledgements. No return address, just my name written in Mom's careful script. I found it while sorting mail in the kitchen, where Esme was teaching 3 residents how to make her grandmother's cornbread recipe. The house buzzed with the comfortable chaos of women rebuilding their lives, children's laughter from the playroom, the hum of the washing machine, someone practicing job interview questions in the living room. Everything okay? Esme asked, noticing me staring at the envelope. Just family stuff, I said, slipping it into my pocket. That evening, after the residents had settled into their routines, I sat on the front porch swing Mom and I had hung together 15 years ago. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing like fireflies. I opened the letter. Juliet. I don't expect you to respond to this. I'm not even sure I deserve to write it. But there are things I need to say, even if you never want to hear from me again. You were right about everything. We failed you in ways I'm only beginning to understand. When your father and I decided to give Kent the house, we told ourselves we were being practical. Kent needed stability, and you had Beckett. But the truth is, we were being cowards. It was easier to give Kent what he expected than to challenge the way we'd always done things. It was easier to assume you were fine than to ask if you needed help. It was easier to maintain the status quo than to admit we'd raised you to be strong and then punished you for that strength. I drove by the house yesterday. I saw Maria hanging laundry in the backyard, the same spot where I used to hang yours and Kent's clothes when you were small. I saw children playing in the garden where you and I planted those roses. I saw women sitting on the porch, talking and laughing the way neighbors used to do. You made something beautiful from the ashes. I hope someday you can forgive us. I won't contact you again unless you want me to, but I needed you to know. You didn't take the house from us. You saved it. Love. Mom. I folded the letter and sat in the gathering darkness, listening to the sounds of home around me. Juliet! A small voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see Lily, Maria's 6-year-old daughter, peeking through the screen door. What's up, sweetheart? Mama says to ask if you want some cookies. We made chocolate chip. I'd love some cookies. Lily disappeared and returned with a paper plate piled high with slightly lopsided cookies. She climbed onto the swing beside me. Are you sad? She asked, studying my face with the directness only children possess. A little, but it's okay to be sad sometimes. Mama says you saved us. Is that true? I looked at this little girl who'd arrived 3 weeks ago with nothing but a stuffed rabbit and trust issues. Now she was making cookies and asking questions and sleeping through the night without nightmares. I think maybe we saved each other, I said. That's what Mama says too. We ate cookies in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the garden. The next morning, I was in my office, Mom's old sewing room, when Esme knocked. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "Says he's your brother." I found Kent standing awkwardly in the foyer, holding a small potted plant. He looked different, cleaner, healthier, like he'd been sleeping and eating regularly. "Hi, Jules." "Kent. I brought this for the house. It's a peace lily. The lady at the garden centre said they're good for new beginnings." I accepted the plant, surprised by the gesture. "I'm in a program now," he said. "Gambling addiction, financial counselling, the whole thing. Part of it is making amends to people I've hurt." "Okay. I know I can't undo what I did. I know I lost something that was never really mine to lose, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better." "That's good, Kent. I'm glad you're getting help." He looked around the transformed foyer, taking in the bulletin board full of job postings and success stories, the children's artwork taped to the walls. "This is really something," he said, "what you've built here." "It's what the house was meant to be." "Yeah, I think you're right." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago." After he left, I placed the peace lily on the kitchen windowsill, next to the herbs Esme had been growing. That afternoon, I was helping Carmen practice for her nursing school interview when my phone rang. Julia. "Turn on Channel 7, she said. "You're going to want to see this." I found the remote and switched to the local news. There was Haven House on screen, and there was me, standing on the front porch during the ribbon cutting. What started as one woman's personal mission has become a model for community-based solutions to homelessness, the anchor was saying. Haven House has already helped 12 women transition to independent living, and there's a waiting list of organizations hoping to replicate their success. The segment showed interviews with residents, shots of the computer lab and job training programs, footage of children playing in the backyard. "Pretty amazing what you've accomplished," Carmen said, squeezing my shoulder. I looked around the living room, at Carmen studying her textbooks, at Esme coordinating volunteer schedules, at the photos on the mantel showing graduation ceremonies and job celebrations and families reunited. "We've accomplished," I corrected, "all of us together." That evening, I sat on the porch swing again, Mom's letter in my lap. The house hummed with life around me. Dinner preparations, homework help, the gentle rhythm of women supporting each other through the hard work of starting over. I pulled out my phone and typed a simple text to the number I'd never deleted. "Thank you for the letter. The house is exactly where it needs to be." The response came quickly. "I love you. I'm proud of you. Always." I placed the letter on the mantel next to the photos of our residents' achievements, then walked through the house, turning off lights and checking locks. In the kitchen, tomorrow's breakfast supplies were already laid out. In the living room, someone had left a thank you note on the coffee table. In the playroom, toys were neatly arranged for another day of children's laughter. This was home, not the house I'd grown up in, but the home I'd chosen to create. Not the legacy I'd inherited, but the one I'd built with my own hands. I didn't take back the house for them. I took it back for every woman who'd ever been told she didn't need it, didn't deserve it, couldn't handle it. I took it back for all of us.